I want to write a fantasy, but not just any fantasy. I want to write an epic fantasy. I want to write about armies, dragons, and heroes. Well, maybe not heroes. I don't know. 'Cause they're a little weird, aren't they? Like, no one's really that good. And even if they are, they. So when Conan becomes a king, is he? Why does him being strong make him a good king? What's his tax policy? I'm so tired of this black and white morality. That's for children. Now, I want to write realistic characters, people who act rationally instead of by some prearranged script where everyone's out for themselves. I'm gonna write a story with every character is a dick. Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, and I can have betrayals and surprises, and I can kill people off at any time, and no one will ever know where the story's going. I'm going to write a story with gray morality. Yeah, yeah. Be great, right? Yeah. I want to talk about gray morality today because even though I'm making fun of Game of Thrones right there, well, A Song of Ice and Fire, because that's the book, a lot of people like the idea of gray morality because there is something to be said for this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. It's a little childish. I want something else. Uh, Now, I don't take that so far as to say never write clear cut good and bad. There's a place and time for that. I'm here to talk about gray morality and how people really screw it up. And everyone kind of makes a joke of it, as far as I can tell, of like, oh, gray morality, so everyone's evil. That's how it's usually written. Just every character is out for themselves. They don't keep their word. They're not honest. They're always ready to betray people because, oh, they have conflicting reasons. Don't you understand? This isn't a world of clear-cut heroes and villains. It's gray morality. I'm making fun of it, but actually, Song of Ice and Fire, I think, has probably the best example, or at least the most culturally relevant example, of an actually good conflict in gray morality, and that is Jaime Lannister's backstory. Uh, Spoiler alert. The Kingslayer, wow, wonder how he got that name, was originally part of the Knight's bodyguard retinue, and the king, the Targaryen at the time, was losing the war, and if he couldn't have the throne, no one could. So he had a plan to blow up the city, basically, and take his enemies with him. Burn everyone down, kill everyone. And Jaime stabbed him and killed him for that, earning him forever infamy for breaking his oath to protect the king, because he chose the safety and care of the people over his obligations to authority and to honor his word. Those are two moral systems that came to a clash against each other. It's not that it's not saying it's wrong to obey the authority system, and it's not saying it's wrong to protect people. It created a situation where he couldn't have both, and he had to make a choice. And it leaves it to you, the reader, did he make the right choice? Now, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find someone who will say that he made the wrong choice. Don't blow up cities. That said, that gives a good structure to what actually gray morality should be. And because I've been turning that over in my head a whole bunch, I actually went and read some nonfiction. Specifically, I read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. This is the book that you may have heard of because it postulates that humans see morality, how people are behaving and what is proper, what is good, what is a rewarding thing to do, as a system of 6 competing incentives. And when you go from person to person to person, you're not finding different modes of morality. You're just finding that they care about them at different rates. And this book can be a little contentious depending on where you are on the political spectrum, because he basically calls liberals morally inept, I guess you could say. The 6 moral foundations as identified by Jonathan Haidt are the care-harm principle, the liberty-oppression principle, fairness and cheating, loyalty betrayal, authority subversion, and sanctity degradation. And the way he studied people, he basically found that the average Republican cares about all six equally, whereas the average libertarian only cares about liberty. That's really shocking. And liberals pretty much only care about care harm or liberty oppression. So everyone is going to care about reducing harm to people when possible. That's why everyone is basically going to agree that Jaime Lannister did the right thing in Game of Thrones. Two moral structures were pitted against each other, and he chose the one that he decided he valued more, but it also happens to be the one that most people are going to value more. That you'll see that in a lot of stories once you start breaking it down of what's actually in conflict. Sometimes the story is just talking about like, oh, two people are fighting over the same thing. They both want money. They both want it for their own reasons. But one person is the protagonist, one person is the antagonist, and that's not really a gray morality situation. You get into true gray morality when you're asking things like, my brother committed a crime. Do I help him cover it up, or do I turn him into the police? You ask 1,000 people from different cultures, backgrounds, economic status, and so on, and you vary what crime is you're asking them to cover up, you'll get completely different answers because different people will value things differently. That's the grayness of morality. And that's why I wanted to read this book, to help give structure to how to set up antagonists and protagonists, and why certain actions and setups will drive people to extremes. For example, one of the books I'm planning to write next year is going to be basically about a paladin hunting a vampire with the help of the vampire's daughter. And the paladin is just the good guy. He's the hero. He's going to be trying to slay this monster that is killing a bunch of people. But the vampire, still having his mind, is going to be driven to a personal action against the paladin because he feels that his daughter has betrayed him by turning against him, because people still value the moral structure of family, hierarchy, relationship, kin, and so on. And you can value that more than the law of the land or keeping your word or anything. That's how you get into these conflicts. And when you put it like that, you'll find these kinds of conflicting incentive structures and systems in most every single story when you really drill down to it. And maybe you'll walk out of them saying, there was a really obvious answer here. This was the good guy and this was the bad guy. But that's how you'll make a sympathetic villain if you're a writer. That's what makes villains sympathetic, is if they are actually pursuing something moral, maybe not the correct set of morals, but, even Hitler thought he was a good guy, we think. People have different values, and they come into conflict with each other. And that's where you can get some really interesting studies and conflicts and drama. So I highly recommend that readers. But writers need to think about this when they go forward. Maybe you don't need to read 400 pages of evolutionary psychology. Yeah, I'm going to do another video on craft books eventually, because I think this is actually on my list of books I would recommend for the craft of writing. And I would not recommend books that are literally labeled how to write. Stuff like this is actually a lot more helpful. It talks about things like, why do gang members get tattoos? You might have just completely overthought that, or you just read it off of, it's because the Nazis did that in World War II. You can actually get into the reasoning, and then once you have the reasoning, you can start playing with it and going, well, what if they're doing it this way? What if this? What if that? What if aliens have a different structure? How can this interact with my space explorer? If this is why humans behave and why they get more effective when they're in groups, because they feel bonded to teams to each other, is how can I use that to let my detective unravel this secret society mystery arc and so on. The actual science, even if you don't think it's writing I'm gonna fucking break this headset. Even if you disagree with his conclusions or anything, it still gives you things to think about, because even if you disagree with him, you should reason out why you disagree with him, how you see the world, how you see the way people interact. And from that, you will tell a richer story. And I think functions like that are how we're going to help recover the very sad state of storytelling that we find ourselves in today. So I'm going to leave it here. Drop a like, drop a subscription. I don't have a question for today's video, so please leave comments. I don't know what about, though. Cheers.